Hey y'all, and welcome to part 4 of the tutorial. In this video, we're going to get started building our mission. I'm going to go more or less in order from where the players are going to start here in their base, and then over up to these friendly fobs up here that they'll be traveling to, and then eventually this enemy town that they will have to clear through. Depending on how long it seems like each part is taking as I record, we may break this up into 2 or more videos. The only thing that's changed since the last one is you'll see I've added names over here on the left side just by double clicking on the group and adding a call sign here. This isn't going to change anything, like I said in a previous video, with the players' lobby or how they see their names or anything like that. I just did this to keep myself a little better organized as we add more stuff. And all right, with that, let's get started. All right, so what I want to get started with here is this base. Now, we're going to start adding some friendly units and vehicles and things like that, just to kind of make this area feel a little more alive. This is entirely optional, but I like to do it just so the players aren't spawning into a completely empty area. Just add a little immersion. The thing you have to remember with Arma is it is an old game. It is not a very well optimized game, so less is more. You could try to go nuts and add a ton of stuff around here. It's probably going to end up bogging down the game and making everyone lag. So we're going to go pretty light. So let's get started. Well, let's get started in this little guard shack here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up. Let's see, we were in USMC Desert. We'll go with basic, just men. And then, I don't know, let's find a guard. So where's just a rifleman? Or here we go, Marine. So we'll give ourselves a Marine in here, kind of looking out. Maybe he's kind of sitting here in the guard post. Now, here's the first thing we can do is if we go up here, we can kind of change his stance. We can change his visibility. We don't want to leave that right now. I think it's actually up here in the group. Yeah, so you have to use it in the group, not the individual is here where you can set some very important information. So right now he's aware. So he's going to be standing there with his gun up like he's ready to shoot. But if we change him to safe, it doesn't always animate. When players spawn, instead of having his gun up, he'll be kind of standing easy. I can maybe put, let's put another Marine up here. Kind of have him looking out this way. And maybe, let's see, we can put let's give a Grenadier up here that can be grouped up. And we'll go ahead and make them safe. And again, that's not necessarily going to animate. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I haven't figured out why. Let's say maybe, yeah, Marine with some AT over there, and we'll give him a squad lead buddy, and we're gonna give them another Grenadier over here. Whoops. And maybe an officer just kind of overseeing everything. We'll actually put him kind of over here. In fact, actually, I'm going to get rid of the officer because, again, less is more. And we're going to put them on safe. And then, oh, this is a neat little thing they've added in here. So let's maybe put a marksman. Oh, so you add it up. So this is where I can use that alt to snap him down to that surface and then move him in. And do they already have a spotter or something like that? I guess not. So we'll just maybe put another Marine over here. And again, we will put them on safe. And then, yeah, that'll be fine. We'll just kind of role play it that these areas are more or less secure. Maybe we have someone else. So one thing that you can do to help save frames is right now we have all these different groups, right? We got this guy, we got that group, we got that group, we got that group. Arma will calculate its resources use based on the number of groups. So basically you can think of it as this isn't 2 different AI in here. This is one AI controlling two things. So what we can do is if I select this guy and then hold down shift to select these, and maybe shift to select these, and then we hit control and shift, we can drag them all over to this guy. And now this one AI is working for the whole base. And sometimes this is actually beneficial because now they're also sharing information. So if these guys get engaged, these guys over here know where the bad guys are. They can be a little bit more effective that way. This is also especially true if you start setting up, let's say, do we have any turrets? Yeah, if we wanted to set like an MG up, they don't have a raised one in this kit. So just for example here, usually the turrets come in as one group, but if I group them to here, now essentially these guys are going to be a spotter for this guy. Again, it just helps save resources and helps things run a little bit smoother. Now, here's the other problem, though, is as we saw before when we brought in our squad over here, that when I hit play, they all just sort of ran out into that V formation. And obviously, we don't want everyone here abandoning their posts. So what we can do here is if I select the group, I come down here to, it's not ace options, it's AI. So here, we'll get into this maybe another time in a more advanced video, but this is where you can set up a lot of different things for your squad. Make them better or worse thing. At 50% is sort of the default value that we set in difficulty, which we actually left at custom. And again, we'll go into more of that later, but what we really care about is this right here, this AI features. This is where you can turn things, it's kind of backwards. So if you check this, it turns off their ability to target things. It turns off their ability to take cover. What we care about here is this one that says path. Now, it's kind of confusing. If we were to check, check move, right? Move includes things like pan and tilt. So if I disable their ability to move, this guy, he's going to look straight here, and if an enemy is even slightly off to the left or right, he's not going to be able to like move his rifle to aim. That's not what we want. So what we want is re-enable move, and it's path. So if we turn off their ability to path, now they are going to stay in this position. They're going to hold these areas. They can still stand up and go prone if they start to take a lot of fire. They can still aim, they can still react, but they're not going to abandon their posts and then all kind of group up here in the middle where we don't want them. What else can we do? Maybe we can add this guy. If I like to select, we can come into here and where is it? Ambient animations. We can say idle 1, so maybe he's just sort of kind of bored in there. Can exit, we want it checked so that way if he starts taking fire, he'll stop idling and do the thing. I've never really figured out how to make attach do anything, so we'll ignore that for now. Hit OK. And you'll see this one, it did sort of animate that he's now sort of idle there in the guard post. So let's give this a test real quick. Let's take a quick tour. So if I... All right, so now that I'm in Zeus, we can see my guys here. See, they're not, standing with their rifles up ready to shoot. They're more idle, a little bit more realistic, right? You're not standing there unbraced, ready to shoot at all times. And then this guy in here, he's doing a little animation. He's just sort of bored, and now kind of move over time. And now when our players come over this way, it just looks a little bit more alive. And we don't need to add a whole lot. All right, and then the last thing I want to do is I know that we are going to want our players to take a helicopter out that way. So let's maybe come over here under helicopters. This is near future, so let's just take a look at these. Mamba, that looks like, oh, that looks like an Apache. So we don't want that. Adder is the kind of stealth Comanche. That one's fun to play with, but obviously it's not what we want. So we are going to want Seahawk. So Seahawk is their new future Blackhawk, and we can see that right now it's spawned with some AI pilots and gunners in it. If we didn't want that, there's this little checkbox down here for place vehicles with crew. If you uncheck that and then put this Seahawk back in there, you'll see it's empty. I do want some crew because I want this set up so where the AI is going to fly them out. I don't want to assume that I'm going to have a qualified helicopter pilot for this mission. And then even if I do, we're not setting up a mission where they will necessarily have a lot to do. And so we're going to handle this with AI. And then if you're ever curious, I always forget how many these things hold. So what I can do is I can come up here to compositions, infantry groups. Let's just do, I don't know, let's put a fire team out here. And then if I just sort of drag them as a group over this little helicopter symbol on it, you'll see this blue box pop up. So they all got in. Let's put another one. So that makes 8. Looks like 9 could get in. So that's obviously going to be a problem because we have 12 players. So what we can do here is I can click on just this left door gunner and hit delete, and then click on this right door gunner, hit whoops. That's why they made Control Z. Click on this door gunner, and then maybe, so that gets us up to, what did I say? That'd be 11. And maybe I'll get rid of this. Oh, which one's the, here, co-pilot, get rid of the co-pilot. Now we have 12. And then we'll just make sure it's like, you know, the person we trust the most, the squad lead, takes the co-pilot seat so they don't hit anything. And that should be fine. So by default, they're just going to sit there and do nothing. We were pretty much done for this one here, but this was where we could also maybe start to say, hey, and then maybe in the mission after this one, we want them to have access to, you know, some of these prowlers. Probably not give them a havoc because that's just always leads to war crimes. And we have Canadians in our group, so we have to be very careful about that sort of thing. So yeah, maybe some heavy machine gun. These hunters. If we want to be... no, we're not going to give them a grenade launcher. We can give them maybe an AT Prowler as well. Just, you know, give them some options. And then these all sit here. And then if we do a mission where instead of taking a helo, we give them cars, it's set up and ready to go. And we can kind of save this as a template. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and save here. And then again, if we were not building a one-off, but actually going to make a campaign out of this, maybe I would do a save as, you know, operation tutorial template, and then the next time when I go to build mission 2, I can just load this as is before we've done anything else. And so let's go ahead and move on up to our next area. All right, so now we're up here at Martin Fob up here in the northwest. So just a quick recap, our thinking was our players catch a helicopter up to this area, and they get told, hey, I actually need you to go down the hill over here to whoops, sorry, not there, down here to Puesto Vulcan. So, you know, one hill over, and we can maybe have a, you know, bit of contact in there or something for them. And then when they get here is when the bad stuff starts and they have to go into Nefer. So let's get started up here. We're gonna do something kind of similar. I'm going to get started. I'll do this sort of off camera just to save on time, but we're probably going to set up, you know, maybe a couple guards up here, a couple guards there, just to sort of make this area look a little bit more lived in. And then we'll group it all up, and then I will rejoin you after that. All right, so you can see here I've gone through and I just added, you know, some guys up in the bunkers, kind of keep them watch. And I grouped them all together, and then I just realized after I hit record, I forgot to put them all on safe. And I guess actually this would be a good point, now that we're kind of in hostile area, to go over that a little bit more details. So if we come back over here, for now we're going to leave all this off. And then I also just realized, because I'm moving too quickly, objects, AI, turn off their path. Okay, so if we come into here, we have a few options. this is going to be how they react when they are shot at. So we can say, hey, never fire under any circumstances, which obviously if we're in a possibly hostile fob, we don't want that. Do not fire unless fired upon. Makes sense if you're going to have them in stealth or things like that. And then open fire is kind of what you would expect. Hey, if I see anything or I'm engaged by anything, I'm going to shoot back. And then you can choose whether or not they want to keep formation. I think by default, pretty much everything goes to open fire, keep formation. In this case, we're going to put them on open fire because, again, they're all these different spots. It doesn't actually matter because they're set to not be able to path, but just for the purposes of example. We've been putting them on safe, which is the sort of non-combat behavior. They have their weapons lowered. You'll even see here the vehicles will follow the roads and use their headlights. And then when they get engaged or they see something, they will swap over to aware, which is when they kind of raise their guns. Vehicles are still going to stay on the roads, but they're going to turn off their headlights. Everyone gets out. They're not necessarily fighting yet, but they are aware that there is danger. Combat is exactly what it sounds like. Hey, I can see that I'm taking fire or I'm engaging something, and it swaps over to a different AI mode where they're going to start trying to take cover, vehicles start getting off the road, etc., etc. Stealth is kind of interesting. I don't see it used a lot, but it kind of should be. And we'll get more into that maybe with another example. So basically, they are going to break their formation. They're going to kind of move cover to cover. They're going to stay prone, maybe crouch every once in a while they need to. And then you can use that to kind of help sneak up on people. And then careless is the same as safe, except they don't switch out of it when they spot a threat. It is incredibly rare that we're going to use careless. Careless is really only there. We may make our helicopter pilot back at base careless so that while they're flying, if anything happens, they're just going to keep flying to where we told them to go. And not, if we miss one enemy AI that takes a pot shot at the helicopter from 2 kilometers away, and now the helicopter goes into combat mode and starts circling and trying to find them, and now we've completely lost all of our scripting. And even in Zeus, I've found sometimes it's difficult to get them out of combat mode and back into safe. So for now, we're going to stick with safe. Formation doesn't matter because we have them all no path. Speed mode doesn't matter because they can't path. Dynamic simulation is an interesting one. I've seen very mixed reports about whether or not it actually works, but I haven't found any problems when I turn it on. Basically, it says that, hey, I'm going to kind of turn off the AI and turn off the simulation on them until the players are within a certain threshold of, distance and movement and things like that, which is useful for saving on frames. Delete when empty is also useful. So sometimes when you eliminate an entire group, the group is gone. You can't select them. Obviously, the players are gone, but the AI is still loaded. So sometimes it helps to just go ahead and hit delete when empty. And then patrol, we're actually going to go into that in just a second, but this is where we could set a random patrol. And then actually, if we come up here to attributes and performance, here's where we could start setting up some of that dynamic simulation. So it is enabled, and we have hey, we have to have a character, aka a player, within 500 meters, or in a vehicle 350 meters, so on and so forth. And then if they're moving, it's ×2. So that kind of helps. Hey, because we're going to be in a helicopter, and it's going to be moving, this is actually 700 meters, which is fine. And we can limit by view distance. And then garbage collection, I tend to leave off. I've seen this cause some bugs. I tend to just do this manually in Zeus. But seeing that thing about patrol actually jogged my memory a little bit. So let's say we want to set up a patrol, because in real life, these guys probably aren't going to just stay in their bunker and stay still and never move. We didn't do this back at the friendly base just because... A, I didn't really think about it, but also B, especially when players are running around with vehicles, we don't want them running into friendlies whenever possible. So let's go ahead and grab our USMC Desert Infantry, and let's maybe grab, just a fire team is fine. All right, so here's where we could get into a little bit more of these things. So We want them to be safe because they're just going to be kind of on easy patrol. If you're on patrol, you're probably not in a wedge. You're probably more in a, let's go with staggered column. That'll look nice. We'll limit their speed mode to, actually, we'll leave it on normal because I think when they're safe, so normal means nothing changes. And when they're in safe, they'll kind of walk, but then when they get into combat, they'll start running and things like that. Or we can lock them to always be sprinting or always be walking. I tend to leave it in normal. Again, we'll do dynamic simulation. I am leaving these as a different group than the defenders because, again, these guys back here are set to not path and kind of be more defensive. These guys I want to move and maybe do some other things. So there's a couple different ways to do a patrol. If you just type in distance to this patrol, it will randomly generate movement markers within that distance and then randomly have them go between all those different points. And that is sometimes useful. I use that all the time with enemy patrols because I make missions to where I want to be able to maybe play them too. And so if I just have it randomly generate every time we start the mission, even I, the guy who made the thing, like I know there's going to be something in this area, but I don't know where they are. I don't know where the ambush is going to be. The other way is this sometimes helps if you right click on here, we can say transform, move to formation, and now we can see what they're going to do. All right, so what I can do now is with this group selected, I can do shift and right click, and you'll see I get this move. And I can say, hey, I want them to move here. And then let's just kind of do a patrol around the base. And I know IRL, you probably wouldn't have one fire team doing endless circuits around the base, but this is Arma, and we have to save resources where we can. And then here's what's important. So right now they're just going to move. And when they get here, they're going to stop moving. But we want them to kind of just keep going, right? So if I double click on this move and I change it to cycle and I hit OK, you'll see it's now joined it back to this starting point. So what that means is when I hit mission start, they're going to start patrolling around, and then when they get to this, they're going to go back to the beginning. And now they're just going to sort of endlessly loop. And I can demonstrate that now. All right, so I'm back here at the spawn in my Zeus. You can see my little animation. So I go to the map. I can scroll in here to where these guys are. Bring my camera up. So you're going to see right now they're not doing anything because we have a dynamic simulation enabled. So if I right click and I teleport my Zeus, there. Now there's a player within that 500 meters, and you're going to see that they are going to start walking. And these guys are now starting to kind of move around, at least in their sort of ambient animation. And these guys will loop. And you can see here the cycle confirms that we're going to move over. All right, and then the last thing I want to cover is we know that we're going to take a helicopter up here, but you'll see there's no helipad. Now, I could tell the helicopter to just come land, I don't know, out here. Let's say maybe they're using this as a makeshift helipad. Sometimes Arma will even do that. However, when there's no actual helipad, it can get a little screwy about where it actually wants to land. And so what we can do to sort of force the helicopter to land exactly where we want it to is if I come over here to props, I have to make sure I'm under objects. And then let's go just helipad. And I get a few options. This invisible one is very, very useful. So this is where if you want to make sure your helicopters are dropping your squad off in the jungle, clearing somewhere, and you don't want it to get confused and then kind of go to a bad clearing and get hung up on stuff, and you say, no, I always want it to go to this area, you can put down an invisible helipad, and you just get this little yellow diamond to mark where it is, and the helicopter will come in and it'll land as close to that as it can. But we have this kind of set up as a real area. So let's say, yeah, let's do this helipad circle. And we want to make sure it's on a relatively flat area. And that should be fine. And then, and again, it's supposed to be sort of a dangerous area for them. And So kind of landing outside the base and then having to get behind the walls it sets a certain little cinematic flair. And then the last thing we can do is if we wanted to change that up, and let's say, hey, actually we want them to land up here. I know it's not flat, but just for demonstration purposes. But there's all these trees in the way. What we can do here is if we go into our systems, and then we go to I'm just going to type in hide terrain objects. I'm going to put it out here. Right now you get this sort of black column going up into the sky with this little tree, and you'll see that actually I hit a tree when I did that. So what I can do is if I double click on that, I can say I want it to hide vegetation, but I don't want it to hide walls and fences or buildings. So I don't want to accidentally hide part of my fob. And I can go under here in transformation, and we have this size and the shape. So let's say I actually want it to be more like 50 by 50 circle. And now you'll see I can hide trees. And then let's actually make this more like 100. And then I can use this shift to kind of change how this oval is working. And now, there we go. We can see now I've got this other area. Pretend if this was a little bit more flat, I could say, hey, we cleared out this area to land helicopters there. Get rid of all that. And yeah, we should be good to go. All right, so all I've done is gone over from Martin Fob over here to Puesto Vulcan, and you can see I've just added a couple guards and a patrol and did the whole dynamic simulation and turn off the path, yada, 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 yada. But you can see that already we're starting to get a lot of stuff built up over here, and even when I collapse it, it can get difficult to figure out where everything is. So what I like to do is we have these abilities to add layers. So if we go in order, let me go back to Camp Green Base. And what I can do is just drag a box around everything here. I'm going to hit this thing that says new layers. This is a little folder with a plus. And then I'm going to rename it from layer 1 to spawn. And now if I need to later and I'm having difficulty finding things, I can just know like, okay. This is all of my stuff in here, and you can go in here. I can name this guards, and then the I think the pilot ends up somewhere up here. Yeah, Alpha 1-4 for whatever reason. Sometimes it doesn't grab people in the vehicles. That's why I double checked. So you can see here I have my helicopter pilot. I'll name this group Transport Helo. There we go. And then it is weird because the pilot and the Seahawk are not in the same group, and it just breaks vehicles out differently than that. And now you'll see everything that we haven't messed with yet is up here. So I can come up to Martin Fob, and again, I'm just gonna highlight everything, new layer, call it Martin FOB. And then come down here to Puesto Vulcan, same thing. And now, again, this isn't super necessary, but I like doing this for a few reasons. One, it just helps keep stuff organized. And you'll notice even like with Martin and Puesto, I didn't rename Alpha 1516 just because there's not a lot here. But now I know like, hey, I want to edit something within Puesto Vulcan. So I can just open up this and I can find my stuff easily, and I don't have to go through everything up here. And then as I add more stuff, like if I add, I'm just going to grab something random. Just down there, you see it's still up here. So this kind of becomes my stuff I'm working on right now area. And then when I'm done with a certain area, I put it in a group. I also do this because a little later we'll go into, you can even save yourself a few more frames than just dynamic simulation does by doing show and hide different groups and different items based on triggers. And we might even get into that in this video or later one. I haven't decided yet, but we're going to see how long this one goes. But this allows you to just very quickly turn on and off this whole area based on where your players are. So your server's not having to render all these guys. Even with the dynamic simulation turned on, you can just turn off all the character models for a little bit, and it saves you a little bit of processing. All right, and then the next thing I want to do, even before I get to placing enemies, is we talked about how we need to get this helo up to Martin. And again, we're building this on the assumption that it is going to be an AI transport and not a player, just because I'm not building this in mind with a helicopter pilot player. So first thing we're going to do is select our little helicopter group here. And like I said, I want to put him on careless. This way he just does exactly what I want him to do when I want him to do it, and he's not going to go running around. And then this is where it can be slightly tricky. You have to make sure you select the pilot and not the group. It sometimes works, but every once in a while I find that when I have like the group selected and then I try to add a waypoint. Oh, see, okay, now it works. When I tested this off camera like 2 minutes ago, it wasn't working. So sometimes you have to click on the pilot. But anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little move here right in front of the helicopter. And then what I want to do is I find it easier if I go to the map. I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to say move to, sometimes I have to click a few times, over here to Martin. And in fact, actually, let's undo that. Let's make this slightly more realistic. Okay, so we have this first waypoint, and let's say we want to make a path over here. We don't want to necessarily fly right over the middle of the city, so we're going to add another move here. I'm going to go in here and just make it a little more realistic. So as far as I can tell from most of the times I've tested this, you can set a height, and this height is above ground level, not sea level. So you don't necessarily have to match it to the map. So I can say, hey, I want them to fly 200 meters above ground level. And then we're going to come over here to add another one. So again, we're going to do, let's see, let's kind of skip up through the middle of these towns instead of flying over them. And again, we're going to make this 200. And then he's going to come in between all this, say 200. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to drop it right on top of our helipad. And we're going to make this 0 because we want it to touch the ground. And now this is where we want to change this, because right now he's just going to move and then kind of still hover. And again, if you hit 0, he's not going to like crash into the ground here. He's just going to he's going to do what he can to not kill himself. So you can see we have a bunch of different options here, but the one we're looking for is I just saw it before I did. Here we go. Transport unload. So transport unload, what this one is going to do is it is going to land but not turn the engine off. He's going to wait for everyone that's in a cargo seat. The only thing that might screw up here is if someone does get in that what is it, co-pilot slot. But we'll have them, it'll land here, and it will wait for everyone to get out of the passenger areas, and then once that's done, they will fly away. And I'm just now realizing that we have this little tree here, so let's go ahead and hide a terrain object right there. Now he's got a nice clear path. And if we follow along, if I highlight, you can see, here we go. So you can see our path in these black lines. So he's going to sort of zigzag his way between the mountains, avoid flying directly over top some of these areas, and then he's going to come in here and land. And then what I want him to do is, at this point, we don't need to worry so much about realism here, because the players aren't going to be in it, and I know where the things are going to go. So I'm going to have him just come straight back here, and we're going to tell him to where is land? Oh, here we go, land. Don't know why it's under advanced. So we are going to say land, and again, it doesn't have to be super precise. And I'm just going to check the path. Yeah, he's going to stay well clear of, we've already planned that all of our action is going to take place over here in Nefer, and even then not by the time that he leaves. And if they, and you know, he does happen to get a pot shot taken at him, well, it kind of helps set the scene, right? And we're not setting up any like AAA or anything like that, so we should be good to go. All right. So there's one problem so far with what we've done. So I showed you we have this set to just move and take off and do all this stuff, but because of the way we've done that, it means as soon as I start the mission, he's going to take off and do all that and not wait for our players. What the heck? So this is where we're going to start getting into our first triggers. These little flags here are triggers, and we'll probably be doing a lot with these later on, but what you need to know is they can either be a single point, or they can be certain sizes, and then even once you place a size, you can come in your transformation and change the sizes. Generally, if it has a size, you're setting it up so that, hey, when something enters this area that's highlighted in blue, I want to do a thing, versus a singular point is going to be usually more script-based or module-based, things like that. So what we want to do is I'm going to go into this trigger. I'm just going to set this one here. I'm going to give it not a variable name, but just a text name so I can help find it later. And I'm just going to call this Helo Drop Off, or Transport, actually. And none of this really matters because, again, I'm not basing it on a location. So under type, we have a bunch of different options here. We can set them as guard waypoints, which we will definitely get into later. We can set up to like, hey, when this thing happens, it ends the scenario for people. But what we want is skip waypoint, which is, as you can see, meant to work with a waypoint linked to the trigger using the set waypoint activation connection. Once activated, the trigger will force the waypoint to skip, particularly useful for holding guard, which we may get into later. So, but what we want right now is skip waypoint. We want the activation. You get a lot of options in here. You can say, hey, when a player, so let's say this is an area, we can say when any player is present within the area, do this thing. You actually can see there's a lot of options, but what I want is radio alpha. And I'll show you what that means. And then we don't need this to be repeatable because he's just going to go up and drop off. So if we try to do this again, he's going to get up there, realize there's no one to drop off, and then leave again. And I'm sure there's a way with scripting I can make it so that it's either a drop off or a pickup, but I'm not smart enough for that. So we're going to leave repeatable off, and then if we need to do a helo pickup, we'll just do a separate thing. And then server only, I'm going to go ahead and check, because we want this to trigger in the mission file for everybody at one time, whereas if you don't have this checked, it's going to be enabled for each individual player, and then every time someone tries to hit radio alpha, it's going to like redo that logic every single time for every single player and bog things down. And the rest of this we don't necessarily need to worry about, but here we could tie in sound effects or music and things like that. And we could do certain countdown timers. So let's go ahead and demonstrate this. Oh, one last step actually before we demonstrate. So now I've told it that it's going to skip a waypoint when someone hits radio alpha, but we haven't linked it to a waypoint. So what we're going to do is you're going to right click on this, you're going to connect, and you're going to set waypoint activation, and you're going to put it on this very first move here. So what we've done now is, before we did that, it was saying, hey, I'm going to move here, and because it's so close, it just automatically triggers, and then say, okay, so now I need to take off and fly over there. So what we're doing is saying, hey, you're not actually allowed to use this waypoint until this trigger has happened. So I'm going to hit save. Let's save him. I'm sorry, play in multiplayer. I'm going to go to my Zeus. All right, so oops, we're on the wrong way. So I'm in my officer slot, my Zeus, and I should be able to just run over here. So we've done our briefing. I've told my players, hey, you're going to go here, and you can see our helicopter is still here waiting for us. And I can go over here. I can say ride him back. And now nothing's happened, right? So what I can do now is, I believe it's under tilde and then reply. Custom, whoops, I'm sorry. It's under, whoops, didn't mean to do that. It's actually under radio, and you can see I have this thing that says Helo Transport. And if I trigger that, the helicopter is going to start up. and we'll kind of skip through time, but in a moment here, once his engine is spooled up, he should take off and start flying. Even look at this in third person. Alright, so you can see we're starting to come in now to Martin Fob. And you'll see he's slowed down, starting coming on the landing, because, you know, human pilot could probably do this much smoother and a little bit more grace, but AI, they tend to get real slow, get way up high, and then drop straight down. You can see our patrol there. We can see the lights have come on. And now we're just waiting on him to land. Oh, there we go. So what should happen is he should land pretty close to this helipad. And he's going to pop me out. And off he goes. And then he'll fly off back to base. So one thing that makes me think we should probably do to fix that. All right, so as we saw, he sort of popped me out right away, but if we have someone take that, we need to put a 12th person into that, what's it called, the co-pilot seat. That could be a problem, so I'm just going to double click on this. Yeah, so actually what we can probably do is just come here and waypoint timer. So time in seconds pass between when the waypoint would be considered complete and when it actually completes. So what we want is it to hold here for a minimum of, say, 20 seconds and then 20 seconds. Maybe he'll hang out for 20 seconds and then take off. All right, and that already worked pretty well, but I think we can do just a little bit better to add just a little immersion. So if I go back into, just kind of click on one of these so I can see my lines. Let's kind of follow along our path here. So we flew along through these areas, and let's say, I think I saw there's an area around here where we got a little close to one of the towns that I'm having a hard time seeing right now. Actually, let's go with, here we go, Chaudron was lit up kind of nice. So let's set up another trigger here. So let's do a 500 meter trigger, and then it's got to make sure that, yep, my helicopter is going to fly through it. And I'm going to set it up. 500 meters is fine. We can see it on the map here. And maybe I'll even make it a little extra wide. So maybe like 500 wide there. Just so that way if the helo is a little bit off target, he'll be fine. And maybe I'll just move it back just a little bit. So as he comes over top of the mountain. And what I want to do is I want to set up the trigger to be under type none. You don't have to have a type. Because what we want is when blue 4 is present, and we want it to be server only. And that's it for now. And then what I can do here is if I come over here to, let's say, I want to go under systems, and over here, there's some cool stuff here, but what I want is tracers. So I'm going to say just tracers here. And I'm going to say the ones used by the independent. All right, and right now it doesn't do anything. But if I sync to this tracer, what it's going to do is when my helicopter flies through here, it will activate this tracer. And so if the players are in third person or something like that, as they fly over, they'll see, there's tracer coming here, so maybe there's someone taking pot shots, or maybe it's, you know, a way of the enemy to sort of say, hey, they're coming. And yeah, and so you can do a few things like that. Maybe kind of back here, they set off some traces over here in Mikas. You could set up maybe some quick little conflicts in this area. So yeah, you can do some cool stuff. And I'll do a very quick sped up video just to kind of demonstrate some of this, and that should about wrap up our video today. Oh, yep, and you can see over there, a couple tracers went off. So again, that could be just say like, hey, it's a spotter saying that they're coming. So nice little immersion. And then we may go back into that thing, see if there's a way to make it do more. I think it's also just sort of random. Oh, yep, more traces over there. So it is a little bit random. It won't target anyone specifically, but it will kind of just go off randomly. Let's see if we can spot a couple more as we fly away. Oh, we can hear it. Kind of flew over. Actually works kind of nice because I think we accidentally flew directly over it, so players can sort of hear. Yep. There we go. All right, now we're coming in for our landing. Now, in theory, what should happen is he's going to land. He's going to kick us out, and now he's going to wait for 20 seconds. So now this gives us the ability that if there's someone in that co-pilot seat, because we got a little overloaded, they can jump out. If someone didn't get hit with the trigger for some reason, they can jump out, and then he's going to take off, and we can just roleplay like, hey, he's only going to stay that long, and then he has to go. So just a nice little way to add a little extra spice to that long flight. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the video there for the sake of time, but I'm hoping that now that we're actually, placing units and doing some of the fun stuff, that you're starting to get inspired and are interested in learning a little bit more. Today we got our friendly areas up. We got Martin and we got Puesta Vista set up. We got our initial spawn area a little bit better built out, just to kind of help increase our immersion and maybe help the players down the road. We got to set up some triggers to get our helo transport set up and add some cool effects. So the next time we are going to start to figure out our enemies and how we want them to work and how we're going to engage our players, well, I guess literally. Until then, I'm Anuncia, and I'll see you in the next one.